a hostage to Putin in this situation. You then think Putin has all the cards in this summit, do you? I mean, because the other way of looking at it is that Donald Trump could, if President Putin is not serious about wanting to work towards a ceasefire, he could impose sanctions, secondary sanctions. He could start giving more military aid to Ukraine. Do you think that's not what Donald Trump would do?
Well, we will see it very soon, I think. But for now, okay, Donald Trump has all the cards, really. But he doesn't seem to be willing to use this card, to play these cards against Putin. And Putin also has some cards. He is strengthening his position in Ukraine. He shows that he is very, very self-confident. He's breaking through this diplomatic isolation made by the West, but this diplomatic isolation hasn't ever really existed. But anyway, now it's in the eyes of the Western community, it's broken. So he has some cards to play, and he will. So I don't know. One thing that prevents President Trump from playing his cards is this, I don't know, it seems to me irrational inclination to President Putin, is irrational respect to Putin, irrational wish to be liked by those like Putin, by those strongmen. And Donald Trump brings into world politics a lot of irrational. That's the fact.
Yes, it's interesting. I mean, Vladimir Putin always has the appearance of a man who thinks he has all the cards, even when he doesn't, it seems to me. Is the situation, do you think, in Ukraine and with the war, a problem for Putin? Because he's made some progress recently, but things are not going well, certainly not as well as he hoped they would go in February 2022.
Exactly, and that's how he plays his game. And he can give a masterclass to all of European politicians, political leaders, including Donald Trump. He is stuck in Ukraine. He obviously cannot win this war in Ukraine, but he's not desperate. He is using different avenues, diplomacy, United States, sowing disunity into the European Union or something. So he's using whatever instruments are at his disposal, unlike Western leaders who are committed too much only to economic sanctions, for instance, and who are too afraid to use other tools, other instruments of pressure, other confrontational steps to make, which are necessary to talk some reason into Vladimir Putin. Because you see, you look at him, he seems very, very happy, I'd say, quite, in high spirits, because he believes that the situation is going into the right direction for him. And Americans cannot do anything to prevent from this situation from aggravating for them. So it's not about Putin. It's not that Putin is so smart, but Putin has been always very lucky with his counterparts because they have been always far inferior to him.
It's interesting. In February 2022, before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, he made that long speech, that rambling speech about what he called the fiction of Ukrainian statehood. And he talked about the madness that allowed Ukraine to become independent in 1991. Do you think that Putin has changed his mind at all, one little bit, on that, or do you think exactly the same?
No, he's 72 years old. How often a person in this age can change his mind totally? No, of course. And he made this story of Ukrainian independence, sovereignty, and even existence an existential story for him. He cannot do without Ukraine. He must do something with Ukraine. Yeah, and he must subjugate it. And so if Trump says, "Okay, Vladimir, okay, I don't care about Ukraine. Do what you wish," then I think President Trump may get his temporary ceasefire. I believe very limited, very restricted, and for a very short period of time. But that's what Putin wants. He wants his control over Ukraine as a sign that the Western countries, NATO alliance, United States, do not wish and are very much afraid of the very idea of confronting Putin directly. And that's then his goal, his primary goal of humiliating the West and President Trump and all other European leaders will be achieved. It's very strange and awkward that European leaders cannot, or maybe they won't see it. But that's the situation as it is.
Okay, Boris Bondarev, very interesting. Thank you for joining us on the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, let's go again to those pictures. We showed the pictures of the two sitting side by side just a moment ago. We didn't have the sound. Let's just have a look at those pictures with sound now.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
Mr. Putin, will you agree to a ceasefire?
Thank you, press.
Mr. Putin, will you commit to not killing any more civilians?
Thank you, press. Let's go. Come on, guys. Thank you, press.
Let's go.
Mr. President,
Thank you, press.
President Putin, why should President Trump trust your word now after you bailed out of a ceasefire?
Thank you, press.
Thank you, press. We've got to
Thank
go.
you, press.
Thank you.
So neither president answering those questions. A frown from President Putin when asked if he would refrain from killing civilians in Ukraine, and various other shouted questions, but as we saw there, neither president willing to talk. And Martha, it's interesting, isn't it? Because that was just a very brief appearance with the two men. And I wonder, we were just been talking about it just now, I wonder how that was, organised and agreed upon, Yeah,
and like you've been saying, Mark, it must have taken all the self-restraint that Donald Trump could possibly muster not to engage with those questions. Some of the questions shouted at the two presidents included, Mr. Putin, will you agree to a ceasefire? Will you commit to not killing any more civilians? And after that question about killing civilians, Vladimir Putin appeared to answer by putting his hands around his mouth to make himself heard. And at that point he said, let's go, and the press were ushered out of the room. He clearly doesn't want to be answering those sort of questions on American soil. There was a translator sat directly to Vladimir Putin's right, and then his foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, alongside President Trump, as expected, was his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. So an unusually silent press conference there, or press spray as they call it, pool spray, where a certain group of domestic media representatives are allowed into the room. Clearly journalists screaming questions over one another, desperate to try and glean anything that they can from the two men in the room. But really we learned very little.
Well, it's also difficult to see where an agreement is going to be, because if you believe Boris Bondarev there, who knows the Russian regime quite well, if you believe what he had to say, Putin hasn't changed his mind about any of this, and he still has all of Ukraine in his sights, just as he did in that speech before the full-scale invasion. Nothing's changed. It's just that, he's, what did he say? He said that he wants to be liked by Trump and Trump wants to be liked by him.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting dynamic that doesn't really tell us much about what is going to emerge from this.
Yeah, I mean, those sanctions that the US has placed on Russia are beginning to sting. They're wartime economy is not very strong at the moment, and that's the reason why Vladimir Putin is in the room with Donald Trump. He's also clearly incurred heavy losses on the battlefield, almost 1 million casualties, injured and dead as a result of his invasion of Ukraine. You know, this war, given that enormous cost, financial and on the battlefield, has to deliver a win for Vladimir Putin in the end. He has to be seen by his people to at least have achieved some semblance of victory here, and it doesn't seem like he's particularly willing to move on the issue of territory. He wants full control of those 4 regions that Moscow has already annexed: Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia and Kherson. He doesn't currently occupy all of them though, so there's no sense really that Vladimir Putin is willing to move on his proposed plan for peace, really. So, you know, I don't know where these two men are going to find common ground, because Donald Trump has assured European leaders, after he had that video call with Volodymyr Zelensky, with Emmanuel Macron, with Friedrich Merz, he's assured them that he won't be agreeing to any land swap today. But that is exactly what Vladimir Putin will want from him. He wants to win over Donald Trump to his way of thinking and his vision of what the future of Ukraine should be.
Yes. I mean, there's no question. Donald Trump, and you cover this, living in the States, he craves the attention, as we all know. He loves the hype. He likes the sense of history in the making, even when potentially there is no history in the making from this meeting. And he likes the spectacle. And as distasteful as this all sounds to the people of Ukraine, you know, there could be more spectacle here than substance.
Well, he's certainly got the spectacle, hasn't he? That picture of them shaking hands at the end of a red carpet there, you see them together in that room. He's certainly the centre of attention right now. But today he wants to bolster the image that he has of himself as a deal maker and a peacemaker. He wants that to be part of his legacy. He's got his eye on the Nobel Peace Prize. It upsets him that Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize and he hasn't. He genuinely wants to bring about peace in Ukraine, whether that be for selfish aims or otherwise. I just don't see the route to that today, given that they have such different views of the future.
No. Martha, thank you very much. So what we can tell you is that this bilateral summit between President Putin and President Trump is now underway. And it's 9 p.m. in the UK, midday here, and history has been made in Alaska as Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin come together, the plan to see if it's possible to bring peace to Ukraine. The leaders landed in their respective aircraft at the Elmendorf-Richardson military base around 30 minutes apart. President Trump landing first in Air Force One. Both men stayed on their respective planes until seemingly prearranged. President Trump left first and made his way down the steps to greet President Putin. President Trump and President Putin walked onto the red carpet, connecting from each plane, and they met in the middle. And once on the tarmac, President Trump seemed to applaud the Russian president and greeted him almost like an old friend as he made his way across for the handshake, face to face, 6 years after their last meeting. And the meeting at the Elmendorf-Richardson military base here in Anchorage was organized not long ago, just days ago, but the work behind the scenes appeared to pay off as they followed the red carpets for all the world's press to see.
President Putin, will you agree to a ceasefire?
Mr. President, what's your message to Vladimir Putin?
Mr. Putin, did you underestimate
Reporters shouted questions as the men stood on top of the small stage there, the podium, and posed for photos in Anchorage, with one journalist, as you may have heard there, asking the Russian president if he will stop the killing of civilians, probably a question that would not have happened in Moscow. Well, earlier, Volodymyr Zelensky had accused Moscow of continuing and ramping up their attacks across Ukraine ahead of the talks between Trump and Putin today. But today's meeting is just the two sides, the United States and Russia. The two presidents then made their way towards their vehicles. I say vehicles, they actually ended up getting in the one vehicle, despite Putin's Urus limousine being in situ there on the tarmac near the planes. The Russian president did get into Donald Trump's presidential Cadillac, nicknamed the Beast, and they chatted, and Mr. Trump appeared to wave to the crowds as the car departed, while Mr. Putin was seen smiling through the window.
Press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
Mr. Putin, will you agree to a ceasefire?
Thank you, press.
Mr. Putin, will you commit to not killing any more civilians?
The two men sat down together in front of the world's press, or representatives of the world's press, but the questions from reporters were drowned out, and any hope of hearing what the leaders had to say was lost. They also made it clear that they couldn't hear what was being shouted at them, or pretended they couldn't hear what was being shouted at them. Let's speak then to Ivor Bennett, our Moscow correspondent, who is with the Russian delegation. Also James Matthews, who is, of course, our US correspondent, who is with the American team. And James, let's start with you. So this bilateral meeting is underway, and as many of our guests have said, many observers are saying, it's already the very fact that this meeting has taken place in the way it has here in Alaska is something of a victory for President Putin.
Hi, Mark. Yeah, if there was any doubt about that word victory for Putin, I think that has gone away, having watched the spectacle of his arrival here. Remember, Vladimir Putin is the aggressor in this conflict, a man with blood on his hands, and yet he was given the red carpet treatment. Not just that, but he was received by a US president who appeared to be applauding his arrival, very much gave it the old friend greeting, and there was nothing less than a military flypast for a Russian president who ostensibly is here to talk about ending a war that he started, ending a war that he has escalated in recent days with a view to coming here. A Russian president with whom Donald Trump said he was very disappointed because of the number of civilian deaths. So quite what that says about the power dynamic in this relationship. I think it's clear that Putin enjoys a degree of power, admiration from Donald Trump. It will have appalled, and we've heard from Dominic Waghorn in Ukraine, it has appalled people in Ukraine. They are galled by the reception offered to the man who invaded their country and who they see as fronting a deception plan. They see it as a deception plan to reel Donald Trump back in, to pull him back towards Russia, to tap into this notion that the war was started by Ukraine. That's what we heard from Trump in the distant past. More recently, he has lent towards the Ukrainian cause, and the view very firmly in Ukraine and European capitals that this is an exercise for Vladimir Putin to get him back on side, at the very least, so that he can extend the war free of sanctions. The notion that there will be a ceasefire announced today, a deal struck today, has always appeared distant. I think, Mark, I'm standing in the auditorium in amongst the US and Russian press. Pursuing peace is the tagline on the stage behind two podiums set up for a news conference which will take place after the meetings, however long they should last. And we will get the detail, presumably some detail of what was discussed, how concrete that is in terms of a deal, a solution. We, I wouldn't hold out too much hope because it has to be taken back to the Ukrainians and, of course, to European partners. But Putin looked very happy. He was all smiles, firm handshake. There was backslapping and, as I say, applause from Donald Trump. What we didn't get from Putin was an answer to some of the key questions, and they were being asked there. Will you agree to a ceasefire? Will you stop killing civilians? Ukraine will hope that these are the very questions being asked of Putin right now as he sits across the table from Donald Trump.
Yes, and James, Trump has always said, of course, that he gets on well with Putin, but then he added the other day, but that doesn't mean you just roll over. I guess this meeting is his chance to prove that.
Yes, and that will all come down to the substance of their discussions. And of course, Mark, it will be about much more than Ukraine itself. But Donald Trump, he has made an effort to talk tough going in to this meeting, saying that he'll walk away. He'll get a sense within the first 2 minutes if it's not going to work out, and if not, he will walk away. Well, we've had a lot more than 2 minutes. He hasn't walked away yet, so maybe the initial exchanges are going well. But Donald Trump has gone into this meeting being quintessential